everybody, I'm Krystal. And my talk today is called Break Your Rules to Change Your Life. And so what I want to do today is through stories, I want to share the rules that I had bought into that were dragging me down at the time, and I'll share a story about that, and then how I changed my rules to essentially change my life. And I want to leave you with a few questions at the end that'll hopefully help you break through your own roadblocks. So for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to define rules as conscious or unconscious agreements that you make with yourself that either support you and move you forward, or they suppress you and hold you back. And beliefs are things that we hold to be true for us. So keep that in mind as we go through the presentation, because I'll be talking about rules and beliefs quite a bit. So I moved a little while ago, and I was going through some old dusty boxes that I hadn't looked at for years. And I opened up one of them, and laying at the very top was this journal. And I grabbed it and I opened it up, and this is what it said. So I wrote Krystal Gabriel, my name at the top, my birthday. I was 13 at the time. And I wrote, so my personal goal was to be nice and understanding to all my friends. I want to be a person that all my friends know they can turn to if they're having problems or they, well, why, need to talk. My goal was to get, not be. A volleyball scholarship, really rough time with the spelling, don't judge, and a grade scholarship. And my dream was to be successful in life. And my goal was to be confident in myself and to what I believe in. So when I found this, I fell back in my seat for two reasons. I was like, holy shit, I was 13 when I wrote this, first of all. And I was like, I probably wrote it amongst, being chased after boys and picking gum off the street, which most 13-year-olds do. And the second thing was that when I read through the goals, I had achieved both of these goals in these exact order that I had written them down. And I hadn't looked at this journal for years at the time. And so I want you to think about for a second. Put yourself in your 13-year-old shoes and think about maybe a note that you wrote to yourself about something you wanted to be when you grow up. An astronaut, a pilot, a ballet dancer, whatever that was. And it was a pretty nostalgic experience. And so when I read through this journal again, I started to cry. And so I'm a big firm believer that things come into your life when you're ready and when you need them. And at this point, when I found this journal, my life was a mess. I had recently just given up the full volleyball scholarship that I had earned in the US. I got it to play at the University of Texas. I played volleyball for a year there. And so I recently gave that up. I had chosen to come back to Canada to pay for my education on my own. I had $1,000 in my bank account. I had no idea how I was going to do it, no financial support from anywhere. I was moved to a new city, didn't know anybody. It was a lot bigger than the city I was from. And I essentially was a mess. I had all these dreams and goals, and I had no idea how I was going to achieve them. And I looked at this journal, and I asked myself, I said, what enabled me to declare who I wanted to be and these goals so confidently when I was such a kid? And the answer was that I had no beliefs or rules about how life should be lived. I essentially had these big goals and these big dreams and an unfiltered mind. And so I started to self-reflect, and I said, what are the rules and beliefs that I've bought into that I'm living my life by now? And why have I bought into those? What have I created here? And then I just started to write. I started to write everything all the negative self-talk I was feeding myself, all the beliefs I had bought into. So what I want to do now is I want to share some of those with you. And then I want to share how I essentially changed my rules to change my life. So the rules that were dragging me down. Number one, I'm not achieving enough because others around me are achieving more. So as Ceci said, I was in a chronic state of comparing myself to others, never feeling like I was ever doing enough, and it was exhausting. I had a lot of negative self-talk going on. So I'd say, oh, I'd love to do this, and I'd love to build this and do this and have this job, but I would always say to myself, but what if this happens? And I'd create this grand negative situation that would force me, or that would get in my way, and I wouldn't act. Or I would tell myself I'm not ready, or I'm not good enough. I'm not ready to start my own business. I'm not ready to travel, or I'm not good enough for that person, or anything like that. I believe that the world was happening to me and that I didn't have control over my circumstances and things that were going on. I believe that school would teach me what I needed to know to be successful. Wah wah, like we all know that's a big joke. And essentially that made me a passive learner in my education. And I believe that Mondays sucked and that Fridays rocked, and that essentially made every Monday made me start my whole week on a bad note. And so I looked at this list and I kind of fell back and I was like, holy, no wonder I was feeling like shit. Like, these just reeked of fear and judgment and insecurity. And I looked like this, or sorry, I felt like this. I probably looked like this. I was like frantically searching the internet to see if this shirt was in my size. And so then I took this list and I shared it with a friend. And I went through it with him, and he looked me right in the eye and he said, you know, it's your fault. And I said, well, thanks, that doesn't help. And he said, no, but really, like, it's your responsibility. And at first of all, I got really pissed off. I said, what do you mean it's my fault? Like, all this crappy stuff that was happening, it just happened. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was this aha moment, and it was like, oh my God, nobody's holding me accountable to these rules except for myself. And I know I'm amongst the right crowd that believes that rules, especially crappy ones, that are made to be broken, right? And if I wanted to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve in my life, that these rules would have to be broken and fast. And so I broke them. And essentially, I made a personal commitment to myself that I wouldn't accept rules and beliefs that didn't support me and move me forward. I would only accept those ones, I would only accept rules and beliefs that moved me forward and that supported my purpose. So I created a new list. And these were some of the new rules that I created. Number 1, I will not compare myself to others. I will only compare myself to the integrity of my values and the goals that I've set. And so this took a lot of work, right? Because I had to figure out what were my values and what were my goals. And so when I didn't have that, I didn't have anything to compare myself to. It's natural for me to compare myself to everybody else. And that's an exhausting game, as Ceci alluded to. The second one is that I will accept 100% responsibility for my life. So I won't accept that the world is happening to me. I will accept that I'm happening to the world. And along with that, I wasn't going to accept the fact that, you know, my success or my worth was going to be determined by external qualifiers or judgment or perceptions of other people. That I was going to essentially bet on myself. I made a commitment that I'll get out of my own way. And so we are our biggest asset, but we're also our biggest roadblock. You know, all these negative situations I was creating and this negative self-talk was forcing me to not act on the things that I wanted to. So I said, screw that. I'm going to get out of my own way. I'm going to believe that I'm ready now. And so if I waited till I was 100% ready to do something, I would never have done anything. And my little kick in the ass whenever I feel that I'm not ready is I tell myself, you'll figure it out. Because you always do and you always have. So for example, think about maybe there was a time that you took on like a stretch assignment at work, or you got a new job, or you landed in a new country. I know a lot of people travel, and you're like, oh, shit, I don't even know where I'm going to stay tonight. Or maybe you started your own business, and you have a little freak out moment, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Now think back, now that it's done, have you ever not figured it out, ever? Probably not, right? You're always going to figure it out. You just got to expedite the process so that your freak out moment happens, so you can actually get to action and get it done. So in all my relationships, I will come from a place of contribution, not self-interest. And so this essentially transformed all of my relationships because it's so much more fulfilling to help other people achieve their goals than it is to pursue self-interest. And I will surround myself with positive people. So it's a bit of a weird thing, and I know you guys all know it happens, that you start to become the people that you surround yourself with. And so it's something you deserve to be picky about. Choose to be surrounded by people that are going to build you up and support who you want to be, and vice versa, that you can support who they want to be. And the last rule was that I will choose who I'm going to be. And this has probably been tested the most, and I can give you a quick story about how this is tested pretty harshly, actually. I was in Bali a few years ago, and I spent about 2.5 weeks with one of the locals, Danny. And we got to know each other really well. He taught me about the Balinese culture. I taught him I'm from Canada, so he taught me all about Canadian culture. And on one of our last days together, he looks me straight in the eye, and he says, you know, Krystal, he said, you're not very pretty. You don't have a very nice face. And I was like, thanks, friend, like, sweet. And so in that very moment, though, I had a choice of who I was going to be, right? And I always say I had 3 choices. So the first one was that I could have been super pissed off at him and resented him for it and left Bali the next day with one less friend, right? I could have internalized it and believed him and felt crappy about myself. Or I could have just paused, felt really uncomfortable in my skin, observed what was going on with my ego because it was taking a huge beating, and just wait. And so luckily I chose number 3. And I had the privilege of getting to know Danny, and so I knew that he wasn't trying to hurt me, and there was intention behind it that was actually pure. And so he looks at me and he says, but, and I was like, oh, right, like just breathing. I was like, oh my God, thank God. And then he says, but I feel that you have a really pure soul and a kind heart. And my heart absolutely melted. And I was like, oh my God, had I chose to be 1 or 2, I would never experience that moment. And that was probably the best compliment of my life. And so it just highlights the fact that every moment, we don't always have the history of knowing somebody before they say something that might rub us the wrong way or a situation that happens, but we always have a choice how we're going to respond to it. And so those are my rules. And so again, these are not set in stone. As I continue to evolve and grow, these will continue to evolve and grow. And if I find a rule that doesn't serve me anymore, then it drops off the list, right? And so, but when I did change my rules, some pretty incredible things happened. Number 1, I set a big goal to graduate university debt-free. So I had $1,000, no idea, and I just said, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but 4 years later I'm going to, and I did. I set a goal to complete my master's before I was 30, and I'll be graduating at the end of this year, actually, from my master's. I started my own business. I traveled the world. I started to travel the world. I'll get around to the rest of it. And I landed a super sweet internship at Mind Valley. And so that was awesome. And so I'd say one of the biggest things that I learned through this experience was that our outer world and our reality and our situation is a direct reflection of our inner world and the rules and the beliefs that we choose to essentially create and buy into. And so I want to leave you with just a couple questions to ask yourself. If you find yourself in a shitty situation or in a bit of a rough patch or feeling unhappy, or maybe you just feel like you've got so much more to give and you've got so much potential but it's not being tapped into, these 2 questions might help shake things up a bit for you. The first one is, what beliefs or rules have I created, accepted, or bought into that are perpetuating the situation? Sit on that for a little while. And then ask yourself, are they serving me and moving me forward, or are they holding me back and dragging me down? And if it's the latter, if they are holding you back and dragging you down, absolutely do not be afraid to break your own rules and essentially change your life. Thank you.